You're welcome to day 19 of 50 days of tutelage. In today's class, we're going to be talking about percentage and also profit and loss. So quickly, what is percentage? Percentage is a way of measuring or a way of quantifying something over 100. A way of quantifying something over 100. So whenever I say 2%, so don't mind my percentage. I'll just be using P to represent percentage. I don't really know how to write that symbol. Whenever I say 2%, if I say 56%, if I say 72%, and so on like that. What I mean is that I'm saying 2 out of 100. This is 56 out of 100, and this is 72 out of 100. And from here, you can see that most percentages can be represented in decimal form. All you have to do is to divide that number by 100. Once you divide it by 100, then you are saying the same thing. Like this one is the same thing as 0.02. So 0.02 is the same thing as 2%. 0.56 is the same thing as 56%, and 0.72 is the same thing as 72%. Now, ideally, percentages should range from 0 to 100. That is, the maximum percentage you should be able to have is 100, and then the minimum should be 0. Although in some special cases, we consider percentages that are higher, and then we consider percentages that are lower as well. But I'm going to talk about that later in this class. But for now, the ideal thing is percentage is always out of 100. 100 is the bigger thing, is the biggest, is the whole. So therefore, you are considering parts out of the whole. So that's why we have this percent, 7%. That is 7 out of 100. So when you say 120%, you're saying 120 out of 100, meaning that you are bringing out more out of less, which is actually not possible. But there is a concept for that, and I will explain it later. So back to this percentage thing, it implies that if you do all this ratio, the biggest one will be 100%, which is 100 over 100, and which is 1. And the smallest one will be what? Will be 0. So these two guys, take note of them properly. Take note of them properly. So when you're expressing percentage of numbers, for instance, now, if I want to say 22.5% of, let's say, of 250, so all you have to do is just divide this by 100. 22.5 divided by 100, that will give you 0.225 multiplied by 250. And so whatever that gives you, 0.225 multiplied by 250, so that's 56.25. That will be 56.25. So 22.5% of 250 is 56.25. What this means is that you can actually get the percentage that is left here as well. The two ways you can do that is that you can subtract this from 100, that is 100 minus 22.5%. So if a question says that after giving out 22.5% of a set of 250, how much is going to be left? So you don't necessarily have to go ahead and calculate the percentage of 22.5% and get 56.25, then you now remove it from 250. You could just remove 22.5% from 100, and then you can get the remaining percentage and find that. So in this case now, 100 minus 22.5, that is going to be 77.5. So whatever will be left is going to be 77.5%. Or you could also say 1 minus 0.225. So because 77.5% now is the same thing as 0.775. But if you do 1 minus 0.225 as well, it will also give you 0.775. So instead of you having to calculate what is not necessary, what is not needed to get what you need, you might just skip the step and lose the idea that the complete 100%, the full thing, the whole 250 is the 100%. So if I'm removing 22.5% there, what will I have left? I can just do the whole subtraction with the percentage and multiply it with the whole thing, and I'll be able to get the part that I need. So that's basically the introduction to what percentage is, what it is like. You should be able to express your percentage in decimal, and you should be able to see a decimal and express it as a form of percentage as well. So that's the first thing about percentage. Now, let's go to profit, loss, and everything. So what is profit? What is loss? I'm sure that the two statements is not strange to most of you watching this video. Profit means to gain, and lose means loss means to lose money. So that's just what it is. So what is profit? Profit is simply when there is a certain price. So you got something at a certain price, and then by the time you would sell it, by the time you would sell that thing out, you had made more money than what you bought. You had made more money than how much you actually purchased that thing in the first place. Or you had invested or you had put something in a particular thing, and then by the time you get the value of what you had put in that thing back, it is more than the volume. So in that case, you said you have made profit. But if it happens that you are getting less value than what you have put in, then you are making a what? A loss in that situation. So how do we do this? How do we calculate it? How do we do all the calculation that involves in it? The first thing you know is that the amount, if you're selling a good now, the amount that you bought the goods is called the cost price. So there is cost price, which is the CP. This is how much you bought whatever it is that you want to sell. This is your cost price. Although you can also put this in some services that has to deal with not necessarily selling goods but services. So when you say cost price will be the amount that it costs you to set up the service and then your experience and so many things. So therefore, when you are charging for a particular service, you would be able to get that, oh, you're making a profit, or no, you're not making a profit. However, it is not that feasible because that one is actually is susceptible to different people's opinion. So we're going to be sticking with goods and goods only here. So you bought a good at a certain amount of money in order to sell it. So what you have bought it, the amount you bought it is the cost price. Now the next one that looks like it is what we call the selling price. Now, there is selling price and there is also what we call the marked price. Now, selling price is different from marked price, and I want you to pay attention to the difference between the two of them. You see, marked price is the intended amount that you want to sell something. That's the marked price. So you intended that you want to sell, let's say you had gotten something for, let's say, 200 US dollars, and then you intended to sell it at 300 US dollars. This is your marked price. But the thing is that it's not always so that you will sell that thing at that amount of 300, because when the old transaction wants to happen, the person that you want to sell to might decide to negotiate. They might decide to talk to you, or maybe something could have happened in the process and you decide that, oh, this thing I cannot give it out for 300 again. Maybe I need to reduce the price because people now have a lot of different variety of these things. So maybe at the end of the day, you sold it for 250 at the end of the day. So selling price and marked price, they are not the same thing. Although sometimes they can be. That is, you have marked the price that you intended to sell the product at 300 US dollars, then eventually you sell it. So what is selling price? Selling price is not determined until the good has been sold. So take note, until you have eventually do the selling itself, you don't say something is the selling price. So when somebody asks you what's your selling price, that is wrong. Until the good is sold out, you don't have a selling price. So what you have before the good is sold out is what? Is marked price. Is marked price. So the best thing would be to say, so not say how much do you, maybe you want to buy a particular thing now. Let's say this is the bag you want to buy. This is a bag. Don't mind my diagram. This is a bag. And then the person says, how much do you sell this? Well, that's not you. That's not really right to say. You can say, how much is this marked for? How much is this marked for? So this is the marked price. So, but loosely we can say how much you want to sell it anyways. But you get the point. So the moment you sell it out, that exact amount that you sell it out is your what? Is your selling price. And that is why profit is always the selling price minus what? Selling price minus the cost price. Profit is always the selling price minus the cost price. But let's say you lose money in the process as well. That is loss. Loss will now be cost price minus selling price. Cost price minus selling price, because the cost price, losing means that the cost price will be greater than the selling price. So that is how you calculate loss. Now, what is now marked price? Marked price is actually the sum of cost price plus what we call markup. So markup is what you added to the cost price based on the intended amount that you want to sell it. That's your markup. So markup is added before the whole thing is sold. In this case now, the marked price is 300, the cost price was 200. So therefore, the markup here is going to be 100. But the selling price eventually was 250. So in that case, the profit is 50. So what this means is that markup and profit, they kind of look like, or they look like they want to be the same thing. However, the only time that markup and profit will be the same is when the marked price and the selling price are the same. That is, you sold it for how much you have marked it for as well. So I believe that clarifies the concept of this now. Now, there is also discount. There is discount. Now, discount is not loss. So don't misinterpret that. Discount is not loss. Discount is what just happened here. Discount is when you reduce a certain amount of money from what? From the marked price. So that you are still making a gain, you are still making a profit, but you're not making as much profit as you intended to have before. That is when you say you had added a discount. So discount is just a way of, negotiating with the buyer and then reaching a compromise. But at the same time, you are not losing. But when we say lose, you are selling below your cost price. You are selling below your cost price. So I believe you get the idea now. I believe you get the idea. So get the idea between the markup and everything. So, but once discount has been involved, once discount has been involved in this whole thing, that implies that your markup will not be the same thing as your profit. Your markup will not be the same thing as your what? As your profit. So that's basically most of the things that we do in this whole profit and loss thing. Now, how do we now compare this thing to percentages? So for instance, if someone says that the cost price of something is 200 USD, and let's say the thing was sold at a profit of 25%. So how will you calculate the selling price? So what will be the selling price of this thing? There are two ways you can go about this. I'm going to show you the two ways. The first thing is that you will find the percentage of the cost price that is 25%. So you say 25, let me use another pen for that. So you say 25% of 200. I've already told you that would just be 0.25 times 200. And what's that going to be? So that's 50. 0.25 times 200, that's 50. So if that is the case, you have your profit is going to be 50. So therefore, selling price will be cost price plus profit, which is going to be 250 US dollars. That's the first way to do it. But another way you can do it is that, you see, I told you that the whole thing is 100. So this is 100%. So if it is being sold at a profit of 25%, that implies that you are raising this thing from 100% to 100 plus 25%. So therefore, the amount that you sold the good is going to be 125%. So in this place now, just divide 125 by 100. That will be 1.25 and multiply it with 200. So with that, you get direct answer. So 1.25 times 200, that is 250 US dollars. So do you see that now? So instead of you going through the long route, finding the profit first, then before you now find the selling price, this one helps you do that. Now the same thing if it is the case of loss. If it is the case of loss, let's say that somebody sold this thing at a loss of, let's say, 22%. So what do? You do 100 minus 22. So when you do 100 minus 22, I think that should give you, yeah, that's 78. So that means that The selling price of this thing is 78% of 200, and that will be 0.78 multiplied by 200, and that will be 156. That means that this good will be sold for 156 US dollars. So that is how you manipulate your way around percentage. So I told you before that the highest percentage should be 100%. So it is cases like this that we tend to employ the use of 125% and percentage that are higher and all of those things. When it comes to loss, you remove it from 100% and you are able to get the exact selling price instead of you doing any other thing. Now, what about discount? Like I said, if you're given a discount, of something, discount does not mean that you are losing money. Please take note. Discount is not the same thing as what? It's not the same thing as loss. I want you to take note of that. So that is why discount is not being calculated from your cost price. You don't calculate discount from cost price, you calculate discount from marked price. Discount is calculated from what? From marked price. So what do I mean by that? So if you want to sell something, now you bought it for 200 and you had marked it for, let's say, 300. Or let me even say 250. That means that you want to gain this amount from it. So you now want to give a discount. So you can give a discount of let's say 5%. So when you're giving a discount of 5%, normally before every of my calculation, I always do it with respect to the cost price. But in this case of a discount, you will do it with respect to this now. So discount is a reduction in the marked price. So therefore, you just say 100 minus 5, and that will be 95%. So in this case now, your 100% is the 250, which is the marked price. So you now have 0.95 multiplied by 250. And what's 0.95 multiplied by 250? That's 237.5 USD. So you can see that 0.5 USD. Now you can see that this 237.5 USD is still greater than your cost price. So you will still make profit in this case. So discount does not necessarily mean that you are losing money. So the moment you are selling and your discount is making you sell below your cost price, it's no longer discount, that is loss, pure loss. So I believe you understand the difference now. So when you're calculating discount is not calculated from cost price. It is calculated from marked price. And discount is the only one that we actually do like that. In other situation, we always reference the cost price as our 100% thing. So whether we are going above or we are going below, we always represent the cost price as the 100% thing. And that's basically more like everything that you need to know. Another way is that if you are given, like, you can be given like, oh, somebody made this so amount of money, you can be asked to find the percentage yourself instead. So for instance, now if I say that somebody made a particular amount of money, so let's say a good that was bought for let's say 1,525 USD, the good was eventually sold for, let's say, 1,428 USD. So the question might say that you should find the percentage profit or loss in this place. By the way, you can say that this is a loss because the person sold below their cost price. So this is the cost price, this is the selling price. So we want to find the percentage loss in this place. So the first thing you do is that you do CP minus SP to get your loss, which will be 1525 minus 1428. And that will be 1525 minus 1428. That's 97. In this situation, it will now be 97 over 1525. Please take note, we always reference the cost price. So times 100%. And that will be 97 divided by 1525 times 100. So when you press all of that on your calculator, you're going to get 6.36%. So this person sold at a loss of 6.36%. Now, take note, we always reference cost price. It's not about the bigger number. So in the case whereby, let's say they sold it for 1,600, so your profit, so this is loss, your profit will be selling price minus cost price, which will be 1,600. Sorry, I meant 1,600 here. 1,600. So 1,600 minus 1,525. What's that going to be? 1,600 minus 1,525. That's going to be 75. So you have 75 divided by 1,525. So you can see that I'm not using the bigger number. I'm always using the cost price. So whenever you want to change from the numbers to percentages, you always represent it with you always reference it with the cost price. That is, there is always that guide that is the standard of comparison, and that is the cost price in this case. So don't say a percentage is always over the bigger number. No, it is not over the bigger number. It is always with reference to the actual thing that is being that is either increasing or decreasing in that case. So that will be that is why there's percentage increase and percentage decrease. So when you say percentage increase, you are still comparing to the initial amount, which is the lower one. When you say percentage decrease, you are comparing with the bigger amount, which is going down. So now, what is 75 divided by 1,525? That's, and then multiplied by 100. So that's going to be 4.92%. So this will be a profit of 4.92%. 4.92%. And so that is how you do all these calculations. What about if you want to get the discount part? I've told you that discount is always, so the everything will now change from cost price to what? To marked price. So when it comes to discount, you always use marked price. And that's basically everything that we have for today's class. Don't forget, if you have not subscribed to the channel, do so, like and engage this video as well. I'll see you in the next one.